Hey everyone! What you see in front of you here is a complete Fire Emblem collection. This is all 13 games in the series, all with their boxes and their manuals. This is something I'm very, very happy to have in my collection. And I thought it would be a good thing to make a video to show off all the games and talk about them a little bit. I'm going to try and keep my descriptions brief because if I go off on each of these games, I can stretch this video out to be like 2-3 hours long because there's just so much to say about these games. Unfortunately, because I don't have a good enough camera, I can't make this video as long or detailed as I wanted to because I wanted to kind of show off all the artwork and the instruction manuals, but it's kind of a pain to do that with my kind of mediocre camera. So I'm just going to show you, I will show you the manuals, but only kind of the pieces of artwork that I think are the most interesting or amusing. So here's the first game. Fire Emblem, the Dark Dragon and the Sword of Light for the Famicom, released in Japan in 1990. Compared to other Fire Emblem games, more recent ones, the story and gameplay of this one is pretty simplistic and it seems kind of dated. But compared to other games of its time, of its type, I think it's actually quite good and it's definitely sophisticated. It was the first ever what we call strategy RPG now. There were strategy games before it, there were RPGs before it, but it was the first one to blend the two into one genre. And as you can see, this game features Marth, who appears in the Smash Brothers games. Well, not the original for N64, but the other two. And the art style for this one is different from the other games in the series, and it's different from what you might expect. The characters look really cartoony. You'll notice that Marth doesn't wear pants. He wears like some kind of, I don't know, looks like some kind of ancient Greek outfit. Look, that guy is, his name is Abel, and he has buck teeth. Really funny, goofy looking drawing. This looks like kind of a case of early installment weirdness, if you ask me. This game actually has been remade twice, and I will show you both of the remakes. So this one is kind of dated now, but for its time it was quite good. And then the second game, also for Famicom, is Fire Emblem Gaiden. And if you know what Gaiden means, you'll know that this is actually a side story to the first game. It takes place in the same world, although a lot of the characters from the first one, including Marth, do not appear in this one. A few of them do, and there are some loose tie-ins story-wise. This game changed a lot gameplay-wise from the first game, and it made some changes that aren't seen anywhere else in the series. So, because of that, it has a reputation as sort of a black sheep. And, I'll be honest, from what I've played of this one, it doesn't seem that good. I mean, for its time, I'm sure it was good. But I'm not really too compelled to play through it. There's a lot of things about this game that are kind of odd. It's the only game in the series where you can actually walk around freely outside battles. It also introduced a couple features that appeared in later games, like branching promotions, like you can choose what class you promote some units to. And there's also a world map in this game. That actually disappeared for a long time. So that's Fire Emblem Gaiden. And the third game for Super Famicom, Super Nintendo, is Fire Emblem Monsho no Nazo. Sorry that my work here with the camera isn't that good. The title translates to Mystery of the Emblem. And this is actually two games in one. It contains a remake of the original Fire Emblem for Famicom with completely redone graphics. Gameplay is mostly the same, and then there's also Book 2, which is a sequel, an entirely new game, a direct sequel, also starring Marth, and it concludes like right after the first game, and it has a little bit of a more interesting story to it. If you've played Super Smash Bros. Brawl and you know about the codec conversations with Snake, the codec conversation about Marth that he has refers to the plot of this game. And got to get to the artwork. The artwork is different from the original. Marth now wears pants. And I'm trying to get a good picture of it here. A lot of text and detail about the gameplay and stats. Okay, here's the artwork section, the character section. See, Marth looks quite a bit different. If I ever get an HD camera, I'll probably redo this video and it'll look a lot nicer. Another reason why it's kind of awkward is that I'm actually using my laptop as a camera instead of an actual camera, so it's kind of awkward to position the boxes and manuals properly. So yeah, the artwork, the characters are like mostly the same. A few of these characters are new for the third game, but a lot of them are returning characters, and their artwork was all redone. And now the fourth Fire Emblem, Seisen no Keifu, also known as Genealogy of the Holy War. And this is a very, very unique game in the series. They completely overhauled the gameplay, graphics, story, and everything. This has no connection story-wise to the first three games. Completely new set of characters, and lots of new gameplay elements. There is no way I can accurately describe the gameplay to you right now, because there's just so much to say. It was the first game to have what would become support conversations. In the first half of the game, you can have your characters fall in love, and when they grow attached to each other, they have conversations with each other, kind of increase their character development. Then in the second half of the game, you play as their children, and the children inherit certain things from the parents, so that adds some replay value to the game, for sure. There's so much of this game that's different from the rest of the series. The maps are huge. Each character has their own individual gold instead of the team having one amount to spend. And personally, I'm not that big of a fan of that feature, and a lot of people do think that this is the best game in the series, and I can see why they would think that, and there are a lot of things to really like about it. The story's good, the music is awesome, but there are some flaws with it that I don't really like. For example, like I said, the maps are really huge, and there's some stretches of turns where you're going to be moving your characters a lot, not really doing anything else. And also, this game can really screw you if you don't know what's coming. So I would recommend using a guide. This is the main character for the second half of the game. He's the son of the character that... No, actually, this is the character on the box. The character from the first half of the game is not on the box, I believe. This is the main character from the first half, Sigurd. So yeah, that's Fire Emblem. Here is Fire Emblem 5, Thrakia 776, and this is the deluxe edition. There's a lot of stuff that comes with this. I might do a separate unboxing for this someday. Unboxing video, that is. And this returns largely to the gameplay of Fire Emblem 3, but also makes some big changes. And this game, in my opinion, has some of the coolest gameplay features in the whole series. For example, you can capture enemies and take their stuff. And you can also have these items called scrolls. And if your characters hold scrolls, each individual scroll affects their stat growths when they level up. So you can sort of customize how you want your characters to grow, and I think that is really cool. But this is definitely not my favorite game in the series because the rest of the game really isn't that impressive. The storyline is weak. The gameplay can be really cheap at times. Even with a guide, you are just about never going to beat a chapter on your first try. One thing, though, I do have to say is that there is an easier difficulty mode, or at least I think it's easier, where your characters earn more experience. And I have not played through the game on that difficulty. One downside of that is that you can't take advantage of scroll boosts as often because it takes you a while to get the scrolls, and your characters level up a lot more before that. But that might be better than the normal mode that I played. So that's Fire Emblem 5. And then Game Boy Advance, Fire Emblem's Fuin no Tsurugi, also known as the Sealed Sword. This is the 6th game, and it features Roy, who appeared in Super Smash Bros. Melee. And this made a lot of... Actually, it took out probably more than it added from Thrakia 776. It kept the rescuing feature. It added a very complex support system. Well, I don't know about very complex, but it added a support system where your characters can talk to each other similar to in Fire Emblem 4. And they have very amusing conversations with each other, and it improves their stats. Here's Roy. And I think gameplay-wise, this is probably my favorite game in the series. Just because it's just really well made and polished, I think. Well, some people argue that Fire Emblem 7 is better and more polished, but I like this game a little more for a couple reasons. For one thing, it's longer than 7, at least longer than any of 7's individual storylines. In 7 you can play as 3 different characters. One's kind of the tutorial and the other two like conclude from the first character's story. And this game is longer than the other two character stories. So I like having kind of a building up one team over a long period of time, and I felt like 7 kind of ends a little too soon, and this one's longer. That's one of the reasons why this is probably my favorite game in the series. And Fire Emblem 7, the first game in the series to get a release outside Japan. It stars Eliwood, who's Roy's father, along with Hector and Lyn. It is actually a prequel to 6 instead of a sequel. I'm actually really surprised that 6 didn't get released in the US, because it would have been perfect for a US release. And a lot of people think that this is the best game in the series, and I don't blame them. This is definitely one of the best, most well-made games there is in the series. Great storyline and characters, great gameplay. There were a few gripes I had with it. Here's Lyn, one of the main characters. This is a really, really long manual. Some cool artwork in here. There's Eliwood, Roy's father. Largely, though, the gameplay is pretty much unchanged from 6. But I don't mind, because they really got it right with the Game Boy Advance series. And more characters here. I can't show them to all you in detail, because that would take too long. Then, Fire Emblem 8, The Sacred Stones. This is actually the first game that I played in the series. It's kind of infamous for being too easy, and that's definitely true on normal mode. This game is a pushover on normal mode, which was actually kind of good for me because I was a beginner, and I didn't really know what I was doing that much. These are the two main characters. They're twins, fraternal twins. Erica and Ephraim, I think I'm pronouncing those right. And, one good thing, though, if you don't want to play the super easy normal mode, is that you can play hard mode right off the bat. And hard isn't exactly super hard, but at least it's not mind-numbingly easy. This makes a couple changes to the gameplay of the last two games. It brings back the world map and branching promotions from Fire Emblem Gaiden. But otherwise, it is largely the same as the last two games. There's a few subtle differences as well. Then we get to Gamecube and Fire Emblem Path of Radiance. This takes place on a whole new continent. Actually, I haven't been saying much about that. I should mention that Fire Emblem 5 is a side story to Fire Emblem 4. Fire Emblem 6 and 7 are connected, but have nothing to do with the previous games. Fire Emblem 8 has nothing to do with any of the other games. And this is also an all-new continent and set of characters. This is Ike, who appears in Super Smash Bros. Brawl. And this one makes a lot of changes to the previous 3 games as well, and adds some things. It's the first game to have bonus experience that you could administer freely to your units on their base. And I sort of like that, but it also takes away some of the challenge of trying to raise up a weak character in the midst of battle. And it brought back skills from Fire Emblem 4. I didn't describe skills before, so I'm not going to go into detail about that. It introduced beast people called Lagoos, who fight a little bit differently. And there are definitely several other changes that I'm not going to describe here. It was also the first game to let you forge your own weapons, which is pretty cool, and they're very effective. You can make a simple iron sword into something really strong with just a little bit of money. And then the direct sequel to Path of Radiance is Radiant Dawn. And I'll have to admit, this one disappointed me a little bit. It's not terrible, but the execution with this one, I find it questionable. I don't like how they made you jump between like 3 different parties every now and then. I like it when they focus on just one party. There were also a couple chapters where there was just tons and tons of units on the field, and it was a pain waiting for them all to move. There's like no way to skip it. And at the end, there's this thing that can really screw you over. I'm not going to describe it right now. But basically, for the final chapter, whatever weapons your characters have equipped at that time become the only weapons you can damage the final boss with. And there's no warning. So if you don't have the weapons equipped that you want equipped, then you're kind of screwed. So this game, I mean, it's okay, but it's just not up to par, I think, with the rest of the series. By the way, one thing I forgot to mention about Path of Radiance. One thing I don't like about this game, it is really good, but the one thing I don't like about it is that you have to unlock hard mode. And normal mode is really easy. And I don't like that and don't see a reason why that's the case. I think if you're an expert player, you should be able to go right to hard mode. They made a mistake there. Then, Fire Emblem Shadow Dragon for DS. This is the 10th game. It is a remake of Fire Emblem 1 with a completely different art style. And this game was not really that well received. And the reasons why are kind of understandable. It's kind of weak on plot. They didn't really add to the plot at all. And there's no support conversations or anything, which a lot of American gamers really liked. There's Marth again, by the way. But personally, I did enjoy this game. The gameplay is still intact and it's still good. They did make some additions like a class change, which lets you change the classes of your characters. And brings in the forging of weapons like was in the previous 2 games that was introduced in Path of Radiance. It has online connectivity, which I didn't really use personally. Yeah, this game did not get very good user reviews. And personally, I'm kind of surprised by that. I mean, I don't think it deserves to be panned that much. But I do, at the same time, sort of understand, because it is definitely not as good as the Game Boy Advance game. Then here is Fire Emblem Shin Monsho no Nazo, Heroes of Light and Shadow. This did not get released in the US. First one since Fire Emblem 6 to have that distinction. That's kind of a shiny case, I don't know how well you can see it. But this is a remake of Fire Emblem 3, Monsho no Nazo, for the Super Nintendo. And this is a remake much in the style of Shadow Dragon, but this is much, much better. Despite having kind of the same art style and a lot of the same gameplay elements, they actually have support conversations. They added a new side storyline that makes the story more interesting, and they took away the requirement of having some of your characters die to access certain side chapters, which is another thing that people really didn't like about Shadow Dragon. I think this is an awesome game, and I was addicted to it for a while. Beat it on both normal mode and hard mode. There's actually not a lot of artwork in this manual. I'm kind of surprised. But yeah, it's a real shame that we didn't get this in the US. It has been fan translated though, so that's good. Yeah, there's Martha again. And you can actually create your own unit who participates in the storyline too, and that's pretty cool. Then, the newest game is Fire Emblem Awakening for 3DS. This actually came out on my birthday, but I just got it today, 18 days later. I went to pre-order this game 13 days before release, and I was turned away. I was shocked and disappointed. And apparently there was some kind of error, and only pre-order copies were shipped or something. They did not ship enough copies at all to meet demand. And stores in my area still don't have it. But I got lucky, and somebody sold it on Craigslist, and I snatched it up today. I am really looking forward to playing this very much. It's getting incredible reviews, and I'm sure it will live up to the hype, for me anyway. And one gameplay addition that this game makes, probably the biggest one I think, is that your characters can team up for stronger attacks in a couple different ways. I haven't played this game like hardly at all yet, so I can't really give my own opinion or comments. But definitely check this out if you have a 3DS. So that's all 13 Fire Emblem games, and as a little bonus, I have something else to show you. This right here is Tear Saga for PlayStation. You'll notice it looks a lot like a Fire Emblem game. That's because it was made by the creator of Fire Emblem. And it's so similar to Fire Emblem, gameplay, graphics, everything, that Nintendo actually filed a lawsuit. And they actually lost. The game was originally going to be called Emblem Saga, as if it wasn't enough of a ripoff already. But they did change it to Tear Saga, sort of to compensate Nintendo. And supposedly this game is really good, and it is very, very much like Fire Emblem, the traditional Fire Emblem game. It has a lot of the gameplay elements. I think it's probably most similar to Monsho no Nazo, but it probably has some things from the other games too. And it has been fan translated, so that's good. Artwork looks really, really similar to Fire Emblem. Not a lot of artwork in this manual, though. Here's some. There you go. So yeah, definitely check this out. if you have the means to. And one more game. There was a second tiering saga, Berwick Saga, for PlayStation 2. I don't believe this has any story connection to the first game. Sadly, there's no fan translation of this one. But this game does a lot more to distinguish itself from Fire Emblem than the previous game did. It's definitely its own distinct strategy game, although shades of Fire Emblem are still apparent. I want to get you some artwork here. But yeah, if you have the means to translate this, please do, because I very much would like to play it someday. It's the main character. So yeah, that is my complete collection of Fire Emblem. I hope you enjoyed watching, and I hope this will inspire you to either try the series if you haven't already, or try some of the games you haven't yet. And I hope you enjoyed watching. See you next time.